My name is Oleg, and I spend way too much time thinking about how to start running. You know what's actually wild? The runners who quit, the ones who lace up in January.
They quit after a pretty good run followed by a bad one. That sequence, good run, bad run, done. Because the good run sets an expectation and the bad run shatters it, and the brain goes, see, it was a fluke, you're not actually a runner. But here's the thing nobody is saying out loud. The bad run wasn't the problem. The fact that they didn't know what the bad run meant, that was the problem. And today, I'm going to tell you exactly what it means. Because once you understand this, bad runs stop being the thing that makes you quit. They become the thing that proves you're actually on the right track. How to detach from the outcome. How to stop overthinking the thing that is literally just putting one foot in front of the other. If you're someone who has started a running routine at least twice, maybe 3 times, gotten a couple of good runs in, felt amazing about yourself, and then had one bad run that completely derailed you and made you question everything, make sure you hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it helps you out, because today we are going deep on something that I think is genuinely misunderstood by almost everyone who is trying to build a running habit.
Okay, so here's the thing. We've all heard that progress isn't linear, right? Every fitness account on Instagram posts that. Every running coach says it in week 1. And we nod and we say, yeah, totally. And then the moment we have a bad run, we completely forget it and spiral anyway. So I don't want to just tell you progress isn't linear. I want to show you why. At a biological level, it literally cannot be linear. And why the dip is not a warning sign. It's actually a receipt. Here's how we actually think progress works. You start bad, you practice, you get better. Smooth upward line, like a graph in a business presentation where everything goes up and to the right. Nice, clean, predictable.
And when we apply that model to running, we expect that every run should be at least as good as the last one. Maybe a little faster, maybe a little easier. And when a run breaks that pattern, when we feel worse than we did 2 weeks ago, we interpret that as evidence that something is fundamentally wrong. Either we're doing it wrong, or we're not cut out for this, or we took too many days off, or we're getting old, or maybe running just isn't for us. Now here's what most people don't realize. That interpretation, that story we tell ourselves about a bad run, is not just inaccurate. It is actively sabotaging your ability to become a runner. Because here's the actual graph of running progress. It doesn't go up in a straight line. It goes up, then it dips, then it jumps, then it plateaus for what feels like forever, then it dips again, and then, only then, it takes a big leap forward. It looks like a seismograph during an earthquake, not a business slide. And the runners who succeed long-term, they're not the ones who have fewer bad runs. They're the ones who have learned to respond differently to bad runs. Look, I want to give you something concrete here because I think this reframes everything. A study published in the Journal of Sport and Exercise Psychology found that among beginner runners, people in their first 6 months of running, the #1 predictor of whether someone would still be running a year later was not their aerobic fitness, not their pace, not even how often they ran. It was their cognitive response to difficult sessions. Specifically, did they interpret a hard run as a sign of failure or as a sign of effort? Runners who saw a bad run as evidence that they were failing, they dropped out at a rate of over 60% within the first year. Runners who saw a bad run as evidence that they were working hard, their dropout rate was under 20%. Same bad run, completely different outcome, based entirely on the story they told themselves about it. And this isn't just some feel-good psychological finding. There's a physiological reason why bad runs are necessary, and I'll get to that in a second. But first, I want to address the thing you are probably thinking right now. Now, you might be thinking, Oleg, okay, I get the mindset piece, but what if my bad runs are actually a sign that I'm doing something wrong? What if my form is off, or I'm overtraining, or I need better shoes, or I'm not sleeping enough? And look, yes, sometimes a bad run is a signal. Sometimes your body is telling you something. I'm not saying ignore every bad run and just positive think your way through a stress fracture. But here's the distinction I want you to make. There are two types of bad runs. Type 1 is what I call the mechanical bad run. Your knee hurts. You haven't slept in 4 days. You're coming off a cold. You ate an entire pizza an hour before heading out. These runs are telling you something specific and actionable. Listen to them.
Type 2, and this is the one we're talking about today, is the inexplicable bad run. Everything was fine. You slept okay, you ate okay, the weather was fine, and you just felt terrible. Your perceived effort was through the roof for a pace that felt easy last Tuesday. You had to stop. You walked. You maybe even turned around early. This is the run that messes with people's heads because there's no obvious explanation, and when we can't explain something, we invent one. And the explanation we tend to invent is, I'm getting worse. But that explanation is almost certainly wrong, and here's why. This is where it gets really interesting. Your body does not adapt to exercise during the exercise. Let me say that again. The adaptation, the getting stronger, more efficient, more capable, that happens after, during recovery, while you're sitting on your couch, while you're sleeping, while you're doing literally anything other than running. And here's what happens in the 24 to 72 hours after a hard effort. Your body goes into what exercise physiologists call a state of supercompensation. It rebuilds the muscle fibers that were broken down. It grows more mitochondria, the little energy factories in your cells. It expands your blood plasma volume so your heart can pump more oxygen per beat. It literally rewires your nervous system to recruit muscle fibers more efficiently. But, and this is the part that nobody talks about, right before the supercompensation kicks in, you experience a dip, a temporary decrease in performance. Sports scientists actually have a term for it, functional overreaching. Your body is in the middle of rebuilding, and it hasn't finished yet, so you go out for a run and you feel rough. That roughness, that's the renovation happening. You're living in a house that's being remodeled. Of course it's a mess. That doesn't mean the house is getting worse. It means it's getting better. Think about it like this. If you've ever done any strength training, you know that the day after a hard leg workout, you can barely walk downstairs. Does that mean your legs are getting weaker? No, it means they're in the process of getting stronger. The soreness is evidence of adaptation, not evidence of damage. Bad runs work the same way. They are, very often, the physical expression of your body being in the middle of getting better. Okay, so now let's go a level deeper, because I think the physical explanation is only half the story. There's something psychological happening with bad runs that is just as important, maybe more important for beginners specifically. Here's how I want to frame this. When you're new to running, you are essentially building two things simultaneously. You're building physical fitness, obviously, but you're also building something that psychologists call self-efficacy, your belief in your own ability to do the thing. And self-efficacy is not built by success alone. In fact, research from Albert Bandura, the psychologist who basically defined this concept, shows that mastery experiences are the most powerful way to build self-efficacy. And a mastery experience doesn't mean doing something perfectly. It means doing something that was difficult and getting through it. A perfect run on a perfect day where everything clicks, that's great, but it doesn't actually test you. It doesn't show you what you're made of. It doesn't answer the question, can I handle this when it's hard? A bad run that you finish, that run answers that question definitively. Yes, you can handle it when it's hard. You just did. And every time you accumulate one of those, every time you gut out a run that felt terrible, you are depositing into what I think of as your resilience account. And that account, over time, becomes the thing that makes you a runner. Not your VO2 max, not your pace, not your gear. Your proven ability to keep going when it doesn't feel good. Let me tell you about something that happened to me that I think explains this better than any analogy could. About 8 months into running, I had what I can only describe as a 3-week collapse. 3 weeks where every single run felt like I was starting from zero. I was slower than I'd been in months. I was walking sections I used to run easily.
I genuinely thought I had lost something, like some fitness I'd built had just evaporated. And then, week 4, I went out for what I expected to be another death march, and I ran my fastest 5K ever, by almost 2 minutes, out of nowhere. Nothing had changed externally, same shoes, same route, same me. The only thing that had changed was that my body had finished whatever it was doing during those 3 weeks of feeling terrible. That experience completely broke my mental model of what a bad patch means, because I used to think bad stretch equals going backwards. Now I think bad stretch
Get 3
equals
weeks
something
in
is being
and never
built
run
that I
again.
can't
They
see
don't
yet.
quit after
And
their
here's the
worst run.
research that actually backs this up, a concept in learning science called the consolidation dip. When your brain is encoding new motor patterns, and running absolutely involves motor pattern learning, performance temporarily drops as the brain reorganizes existing neural pathways to make room for the new skill. It's not regression, it's reorganization. And on the other side of it, you're genuinely more capable than you were before.
Here's something I find fascinating. If you talk to elite distance runners, people who have been running for 15, 20 years, and you ask them about bad runs, almost all of them have the same response. They shrug. Not because they don't have bad runs. They absolutely do. A world-class marathon runner will have runs that feel terrible, where their pace is off, where nothing clicks. But they've accumulated enough evidence over years that a bad run is just a data point. It doesn't threaten their identity as a runner, because their identity as a runner is already secure. It's just Tuesday. Tuesday was rough. Wednesday might be better. The problem for beginners is that their identity as a runner is still fragile, still forming, so every bad run feels like a referendum on whether they're really a runner, and every good run feels like proof that maybe, just maybe, they are. And here's what most people don't realize. The only way to get from fragile runner identity to secure runner identity is through bad runs. You have to have them. You have to get through them. There's no shortcut. The good runs don't harden you. The bad runs do.
Okay, so let's get actionable, because I don't want this to just be an interesting perspective. I want you to be able to use this. Step 1. Rename the bad run while it's happening. This sounds almost stupidly simple, but it works. Instead of telling yourself, this is a bad run, which your brain immediately associates with failure, with regression, with evidence that you can't do this, try replacing it with, this is a hard run, or even, this is an important run. Language shapes perception. Bad implies wrong. Hard implies effort, and you want to be in the effort mindset, not the failure mindset. When my legs feel like concrete at minute 6 of an easy jog, I try to literally say to myself, this is the work, this specific moment, this struggle, this is it. Step 2. Set a minimum viable goal for every run. Here's the thing most beginners don't do. They go out with a fixed plan, 30 minutes, 5 kilometers, whatever. And if the run starts going badly, they're suddenly in a negotiation with themselves. Do I stop? Do I push through? What counts as finishing the run? Set your minimum viable goal before you leave the house. Something like, no matter what, I will run for 10 minutes. Or, no matter what, I will make it to the end of the block and back. Something so achievable that even on your worst day, you can clear the bar. Because completing the minimum viable goal, even when everything feels terrible, is a mastery experience. It's a deposit in the resilience account. And psychologically, it's far more powerful than going out with an ambitious goal and having to bail on it halfway through. Step 3. Use bad runs as evidence, not against you, but for you. Most people keep running logs focused on metrics, pace, distance, heart rate, which is useful, but I want you to try something different that almost nobody does. After a bad run, open your Notes app, don't even wait until you get home, and write 3 words. I did it. That's it, 3 words. Not your pace, not how far you went, not how terrible you felt, just I did it. because what you're doing in that moment is creating a paper trail of your own resilience. You are building a case file, evidence that can be entered as testimony the next time your brain tries to convince you that you're not a runner. You open that note, you scroll back, you see, I did it, I did it, I did it, 30 times, 40 times. Try arguing with that. Here's the psychological mechanism. Memory is reconstructive, not reproductive, meaning your brain doesn't play back the past like a video, it rebuilds it from available evidence. When you have no record of your bad runs, your brain fills in the blanks with its default story. You struggled, you suffered, this is hard for you. When you have a record, the record overwrites the story. I have done this 30 times. That's the evidence that matters. Step 4. Stop comparing run to run, compare month to month. If you assess your progress by comparing today's run to last Thursday's run, you are going to drive yourself insane. The variation is too high. You'll see regression that isn't real because you're zooming in too close. Zoom out. Compare this month to last month. Are you running more days? Are your best runs getting better? Are your bad runs happening less frequently? That's progress. That's the signal. Don't let the daily noise drown it out.
Okay, here's where I want to leave you with something that I think is genuinely counterintuitive. The runners who progress fastest, the beginners who go from gasping through a 5K to comfortably running 10K in a few months, are almost never the ones who had the most consistent, easy, comfortable runs. They're the ones who had the most varied experience early on. Good runs and bad runs, surprising breakthroughs and humbling setbacks. They threw a lot at their body. Their body responded. And crucially, they stayed in the game long enough for the response to happen. There's actually a concept in training theory called hormesis, the idea that a stressor, applied at the right dose, produces a stronger adaptive response than comfort does. Small amounts of a difficult thing make you more resilient to that thing. Your immune system works this way, your muscles work this way, and your mental relationship to hard efforts, it works this way too. The bad runs are the stressor, the resilience is the adaptation. You cannot get one without the other. So here's where I want to land this. If you are a beginner runner, or you're someone who keeps starting and stopping because the bad runs make you feel like you're not cut out for this, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not struggling because you are not a runner. You are struggling because you are becoming one. Those are two completely different things, and they can look identical from the inside. The runner who finishes a terrible, grinding, wanna-quit 20-minute jog and goes home feeling defeated, and the runner who finishes a great 20-minute jog feeling amazing, a year from now, the first runner might be further along because they've been training something the second runner wasn't even working on. The next time you have a bad run, and you will have a bad run, I want you to try something. Before you take your shoes off, before you open your phone, before you let the little voice start talking, I want you to just say, that was an important one. Because it was. It really was. If this video helped you think about your running differently, hit the like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach other people who are out there grinding through their own bad runs right now. Subscribe if you want more of this, because I'm going to keep going deep on the psychology of running and what actually makes people stick with it long term. And I'll see you in the next one.